Have you noticed that backpacking seems to generate an awful lot of garbage? I have, and I think it's a good time to have a conversation about how we can reduce some of that backpacking waste. When I was hiking the Appalachian Trail several years ago, I quickly learned that I did not like carrying a big stinky bag of trash, and that discovering a trash can along the trail or even a dumpster was almost as good, not quite, but almost as good as coming across trail magic.
It's really my lucky day. I just found a trash can. Woo!
You've backpacked for any amount of time, you know that there is a lot of trash that comes along with that lovely outdoor hobby. And if you can find some ways to reduce the waste, it's not only good for the environment, but also could be good for you. I've got 13 tips, quick tips that I'm going to share with you today on ways that you can reduce waste while you're on the trail. And then if you stick with me to the end, I've got 3 bonus tips for things that you can do either before or after your hike to reduce waste as well. Now, you might think that low waste backpacking means that you're going to be adding a lot of weight to your pack with reusable containers and things like that. But my current base weight is about 15 pounds, and I carry a lot of the things that I'm going to suggest to you as tips. So stay tuned and we'll figure out how to keep that pack light while also cutting down on the trash that you produce and the impact on the environment. So let's get started. The first and most obvious thing that you might think of is water bottles, because thru hikers are always walking around with water bottles in their pack. A lot of people use smart water disposable bottles, and it's great that they're reusing them, but lots of people also get new bottles every time they go into town, and that's not really necessary. So even though those are things that are going to eventually end up in a landfill, if you can stretch that out or recycle those bottles when you're done with them, that's very helpful. Now, what I have found is that there are some bottles, like the Life Water bottles, that are made of a little bit heavier plastic. They're more durable, they last longer, and I actually got through pretty much, I think, almost the whole Appalachian Trail without having to replace my water bottles. I just put a little piece of tape on them so I know they were mine and not get them mixed up with anybody else's. And then when I went into town, I would just wash them out, put a little dish soap in there, shake them up real good, stand them up to dry, and I'd be ready to go when it was time to leave town with clean bottles and not new bottles. If you don't want to carry those, because a lot of people are trying to get away from plastics altogether, you might choose to use a reusable bottle, and Hydro Pack makes a nice one that is collapsible, but you certainly do not need to carry a big old Nalgene, a Hydro Flask, or a Stanley bottle, which might be fine for a day hike if you don't mind carrying the weight, but I know on a long distance hike you do not want to have that much weight in your pack. Something else you can do when you're in town for resupply is to split food packages with other backpackers. Lots of places that when you say, I need to do resupply, they're going to load up a bunch of hikers in the car and take you all to Walmart, where you can get giant packages of food for resupply. Now, you may not need all that, and you might want to take some of it and throw it in a box to send ahead as a resupply box. Or if you're lucky and you are with other hikers, you might be able to split some of those packages. So while you're buying something that might have, say, 12 packs of fruit snacks in it, you might each only want to take 6 on the trails. So that does help reduce some of the packaging waste that you might encounter. Also, just looking for things that don't require single-use packaging is helpful. So anytime that you can split packages or reduce packaging or even buy things in bulk to take them with you is going to reduce some of the waste that you will have on the trail and some of the trash that you generate as a backpacker. Another way that you can reduce waste is to dehydrate some of your own backpacking meals. Now, I know a lot of people do that, and they might put different ingredients into different little baggies, and that creates a lot of waste. But you could also put your dehydrated meal into a reusable bag, a silicone bag, and that will allow you to use the bag again after you've had that meal versus buying a Mountain House meal or something else that comes with a lot of packaging, because those you've got the package that you have to carry out after you eat the meal, which can be heavy, and it's also got an oxygen absorber in there. So that packaging to me is very wasteful, and so I try not to do backpacking meals, even though they're yummy, too often, maybe once a week or so. And if I do get a prepared backpacking meal, I'm going to look for one from a company that puts them into biodegradable bags, like Farm to Summit, which is based out of Durango, Colorado. Their meals are really good. I tried them when I was on the Colorado Trail, and that reduces packaging waste because those containers can actually be composted once you're done with them. Not on the trail, because that wouldn't be very leave no trace, but you can find a place to put them when you get into town and not have that kind of plastic metallic film that you find on so many backpacking meals that is not earth friendly. I mentioned looking for things that are not single-use packages or small packages. This also applies to when you are packing out food, whether that's leftovers or something else that you want to take, like a nice block of cheese or a piece of bread. You can use a beeswax wrap, which is basically fabric infused with beeswax that you can soften it up a little bit in the sunshine and then just wrap it around that piece of food. It preserves it very, very well, and it means that you're not carrying extra plastic wrap or tin foil or extra Ziplocks to put that food in. And then also for leftovers, instead of taking a plastic lined cardboard box or a styrofoam box that you might get from the restaurant, you can bring your own little reusable container to put those things in. And those are not really that heavy. If you just get a little Rubbermaid one, they're really lightweight, and although it takes up space, you can put some other items in it when you're not using it. And then when you're in the restaurant and you're ready to go and you've got half a sandwich left, you can just throw it in there and take it with you instead of having the restaurant give you something that is not recyclable and not earth friendly. They also will probably try to hand you some utensils for your leftovers, and you probably don't need to carry those either. You can just refuse them so you don't end up with this little plastic bag that's got a knife, a fork, a spoon, a napkin, salt and pepper in it. You might want the salt and pepper, but everything else you can just let them know, I don't need that because I've got a spork, and just go light and carry your own container. And I think you'll find that it's a lot more convenient too and quick, because you don't have to sit and wait for somebody to bring you some packaging for your food or take it to the back and bring it back to you. You just throw it in there and you're gone. Back to hiking. Now, if you tend to put all your food in your food bag into large Ziploc bags, try something like a smelly proof bag, because they're odor proof and they actually wear better than a Ziploc bag. You can buy these on Amazon in all different kinds of sizes. They come in little snack sizes all the way up to, I think, a 2-gallon bag. And I will put links for those down below. I've tested them and I feel like they're really a good product. And carrying those means that you don't have to carry Ziplocks, and Ziplocks, we know, are a premium on the trail. People are always looking for more Ziplocks. So if you can use some that are going to carry you through a lot more miles, then that's a great idea. If you do have to get Ziplocks, I'd suggest looking for the zipper bags that are biodegradable. They don't last quite as well as some of the plastic ones, but for through hiking, I think they would be very convenient, and then you know that you've got an earth-friendly solution to your food storage. So I want to pause for just a second and ask you to please take a moment to hit that subscribe button down below if you're not a subscriber, and if you are, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. You can also like or share this video to let other people know that it's worth watching. And of course, now when you're cooking, you may run low on fuel and think, okay, I've got, just this much fuel left, but I want to get a new canister and I don't want to carry the old one, so into the hiker box it goes, right? Or you get into town and you look in the hiker box and there's 10 or 12 different half-empty fuel canisters. You can get a little gadget. The brand name is Flip Fuel, although there are knockoffs available, and it looks like a backpacking stove, only it's got threads on both sides and a little handle that you turn to open up the fuel. So basically what you do is you take your fuel canister and another one that's got a little bit more fuel in them, put one in the fridge or one in the sun so that warms up, and that differential in terms of the gas is going to make the gas transfer from one canister to another when you open the valve. You could take a couple of half-empty or mostly empty fuel canisters from a hiker box, fill up your fuel canister, and walk out of town with basically a brand new canister without having to buy a brand new canister. And those canisters that you have emptied are now recyclable because they don't have any fuel in them. Now, you don't want to just let that fuel go into the environment, right? When you're backpacking, you don't want to just burn it off so that it's empty so you can recycle it. It's much better and cost effective if you can use one of those gadgets to transfer the fuel. They only weigh a couple of ounces. They're very inexpensive, and I found that it's well worth carrying that on the trails. It's just nice to be able to refill the fuel canister and get more use out of it instead of having to trash it and have it go into a landfill. Or look for partially full fuel canisters in the hiker box and fill up that way instead of having to run to the store and stress out, like, do they have fuel? Can I get fuel? If you've got a Flip Fuel or another similar device, then you're pretty much always going to be able to get fuel to tide you over to the next town stop. Now, you might also carry meds in a little bottle, like a small bottle of travel size ibuprofen or something like that. That is waste. So it's convenient, obviously, to be able to say run into Dollar Tree and pick up a small bottle, But lots of times, again, in the hiker boxes, you will find somebody's dumped a big bottle of ibuprofen because that's what they bought and they only took a handful. If you've got reusable containers, you can just get what you need to take with you and leave the bottle there for somebody else. So you're kind of paying it forward by sharing, and then also not creating additional waste by buying these small disposable bottles of meds. I like bottles that are made by Nalgene. They're pretty lightweight. They have a screw top, and then also there are some that I really love that are from 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐢, and they just kind of pop open. And I found that they don't come open in my pack. They're pretty much waterproof and they're very handy. So take a look at those. I put the link down in the description for you. Now, along those same lines, you can take toiletries and take them from larger packages, which you may also find in hiker boxes, because a lot of times somebody might buy a bottle of something and, you know, not need everything. And so you could just put it into one of these small containers. And they come in anywhere from a size that's just like an inch and a half to, you know, 3 or 4 inches. If you're just going out for a week or so backpacking, then you could just take whatever you have at home and put it into this travel container and take it with you. And it really does not add weight to your pack at all, because if you're taking those in the plastic container that they came in, then that's probably even heavier. One of my favorite tips, and I've been doing this for years, is carrying a very lightweight travel backpack from Sea to Summit. And I use that for my clothes while I'm hiking, but then when I get into town, I empty it out and I use it as my grocery bag. And I don't have to worry about, can I find a grocery bag in the store? A lot of states now don't have them anymore. In Colorado, you have to pay for them if you take a bag. So it's much easier to just go into the store knowing I've got my carry bag with me and I can put my groceries in it. Sometimes I just do that as I shop and then check out, then put them back in when I'm done. And that is no extra weight, and it's a multi-purpose thing because it's carrying my clothes when I'm not in town. You could still just carry a super lightweight reusable grocery bag and have that so that you can put all your groceries in that when you go to resupply and not have to worry about plastic bags. Now, as you're hiking on the trail, you are certainly going to need to relieve yourself at some point. And for a lot of people, that generates a lot of TP. If you are going number 2, you could use a bidet. They make these little spray bottles that can substitute for toilet paper. It's a good way to kind of clean yourself. I don't use one personally, but I know a lot of people that do. And that means that you're not either having to pack out toilet paper or having to make sure that your cat hole is deep enough to bury it so that it's not going to end up being little flowers along the trail. Now, if you're going number 1, and particularly if you're a woman, you could use something like a pee-style funnel that allows you to pee standing up and then also kind of works as a squeegee so you don't need any toilet paper. Or the Kula cloth is also become very, very popular. You've probably seen these hanging off people's packs. It's a little triangular cloth that's got antimicrobial properties. It's waterproof on one side and absorbent on the other, so you can use that instead of TP. Just hang it off your pack, and as the sun dries it out, the antimicrobial properties of the sunshine and the material help it make it a little bit more sanitary than something like a pee rag, which unfortunately sometimes gets mistaken for something else. So you don't have to worry about people wanting to borrow your pee rag, which happens. And then when you get into camp at night, you may want to kind of wash up a bit. I know when it's really dusty and dirty, I like to do that. And there have been times where I have carried wet wipes, but unfortunately wet wipes are not typically biodegradable. They contain plastics, and so if you use them, you have to carry them out. And they're also, I find, heavier because you're carrying, if it's not a dry wipe, you're carrying something that's got water in it, and that's heavy. So rather than doing that, just use a bandana that you're carrying, and then you can use it to clean up with a little bit of water, and then rinse it out and hang it on your pack and dry it out. And there's no waste at all for that. Or if you carry a camp towel, which I carry just to wipe condensation off my tent, you could use that as well for a quick wash up and not have anything wasteful like wet wipes or camp wipes. The added advantage is that you're not also having to pack those out because that's just weight and bulk in your pack. Now, the final tip I have for you is when you do find that coveted trash can along the trail, instead of taking whatever your trash is in, whether that's a Ziploc or an old grocery bag or something, and throwing the whole thing into the trash can, just dump it out and then save the bag and keep putting your trash in there. This works great if your trash is not that messy, if it's leaked and it's gross and, you know, maybe you want to just rinse it out if you can. But you can get a lot of use out of a single Ziploc for trash, or I use a smelly bag like I've mentioned before. They're really helpful and they keep the odors out, which is nice. And then I also take my trash and I try to kind of nest it. So I put a small wrapper inside the next size wrapper inside the next size wrapper, which keeps it compact, and so I can get a lot more trash in there. But if you can reuse that bag even 3 or 4 times, then you are cutting that waste by 3 or 4 times. So it's helpful to take any of these tips and use them to not necessarily eliminate trash completely. I think zero waste backpacking is something that we're a little ways away from, but if you can use those tips to reduce the waste, to stretch things out for longer periods of time, to use them longer, so that you don't have to replace them and discard the old ones as often, then that's going to go a long ways towards not only making backpacking easier for you, but also reducing the waste that you have to deal with along the trail. Now, I promised you 3 bonus tips for things that you could do when you get home, either before or after the trail. The first one of those is when you're buying new backpacking gear, look for items that are made with recycled fabrics. Now, this is really easy if you're looking at clothing now. So many companies have recycled materials, and you might see on the tag that, you know, this hoodie was made from recycled water bottles. That's awesome. And they perform really well. I've tested a lot of these, and they are performing very, very well. So I have no qualms at all about buying something that is made out of recycled materials. In fact, I think it's a great way to reuse some of those things that we as backpackers throw away, like water bottles. You can also buy used gear. So if you want to upgrade to something or try a piece of gear you haven't used in the past, then why not get something that's used that you found secondhand on Facebook, through one of the backpacking groups, or just, you know, even through a thrift store or garage sale or your local hiking groups. You might find somebody who's got a piece of gear that they're upgrading or they don't want anymore. It's a great way to get more life out of gear that is still serviceable. And if you have gear that is something that you want to get rid of because you're upgrading, you could also sell that yourself. You might be able to trade it in. REI has a used gear program now, and there are other retailers who are doing that. So just keep your eyes out for those opportunities. Might save you a little bit of money, as well as putting a piece of previously loved gear to good use. If you've got a piece of gear that is damaged, you may want to just repair it. Things like buckles for backpacks and even zippers can be replaced. Having something like that break on your pack or on your tent doesn't mean that it's worthless. It can be repaired. Even tent poles can be shipped off to a company called Tent Pole Technology. I'll put their link down in the description as well in case you need that. But yeah, a lot of people think, oh, I've broken a pole, I can't buy new ones, so I'm going to have to get a whole new tent, and that's not the case. And save yourself money and keep a piece of gear out of the landfill by just repairing it and using it for a little bit longer. If you've got something that is completely beyond repair, or the gear is just outdated in the standpoint of technology or weight or something like that, odds are that it could be recycled as well, either taken apart and reconfigured into something else, or just the materials itself could be recycled. So look into that before you toss an old pack and see what you could do with it to give it a little bit more life. So those are my tips for reducing backpacking waste on the trail. If you've got ideas of your own, you can share them down below in the comments. I do read all the comments and I appreciate the input. And I'm working hard to get this channel up to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but I do feel like there's opportunity for growth here. So please take a moment to hit that subscribe button down below. You can also like and share this video. That's a great way to support my work and let YouTube know that my content is worth watching. And I look forward to seeing you here again next time.